Hey, I'm Brody Vinson, and in the next few minutes, I'm going to save you $39,000 and over 1,200 hours. See, tomorrow I'm walking across the stage, and I'm going to graduate after 2 years of work with my Master's of Business Administration, or my MBA. Graduating from the University of Central Florida in Orlando, Florida, which is one of the biggest colleges in the United States. I wanted to share with you some of the biggest takeaways I got. So today I'm going to break down from the 14 classes I took, one of the biggest lessons that I got from each one, and save you the time, save you the money, and help you decide if this is right for you. Now, I'm a little bit unique to a lot of my classmates that went through this with me because a lot of them were in traditional 9 to 5 type jobs looking to just elevate themselves in their careers. I'm actually a business owner, and I was going in, and I still am. And so I was going through this with the goal of becoming a better business owner. And I feel like I did really achieve that. So the first class that I took was economics. And the biggest takeaway I got from this was the SWOT analysis. In other words, SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And you can actually do a SWOT analysis on yourself or on your company. So I'll give you an example. We actually did a big SWOT analysis for Zoom, the video conferencing company. So one of its strengths was that it's been adopted as a verb pretty much. When you think about video calling someone, a lot of people just say, I'll Zoom you, we'll do a Zoom. So that's a strength for them in a branding sense. People just think of them naturally when they go to actually do a video call. So that's helped them actually gain a lot of market share. Now, a weakness of Zoom is that it's actually less secure than some of its competitors. So there are people who go to other video conferencing websites if they need that security. So that's been a little bit of a weakness. Another opportunity would be that they can expand into international markets because they have a free model for using Zoom. They can actually expand into maybe underrepresented countries really well and be able to take that market share from maybe competitors that have a cost associated with them. Now, another thing to think about here is the threats that they have. So they actually have, there's a lot of really great substitutes for Zoom. For example, Google Meet is one. People can go use Google Meet for free as well. And it's a really great tool also. So Zoom has some really strong competitors. So the value of doing a SWOT analysis on yourself and on your company, something that can kind of help you identify what you need to work on and how you can do it and what kinds of things you actually have working for you. So I think this is really important, especially as a business owner. Now, another thing is the next class that I took was accounting. And the biggest thing that I learned here is that numbers tell a story. Believe it or not, my accounting professor was the type of guy that just like, he was so passionate about it that he actually made us enjoy accounting during this, which was really cool because it was refreshing because before that, I really hated accounting. I had very bad experience with it before. But the biggest takeaway that I got here was that numbers tell a story. So if you can actually read a profit and loss statement from a company, whether it be yours or someone else's, I look at a lot of different profit and loss statements because I do consulting with business owners. And so I can look at their profit and loss statement and identify little things that need improvement. For example, if someone has really high costs in a particular area, I might be able to ask them, hey, why do you have those costs? Is there something we can do about that? Is that totally necessary? And that might help us improve the profitability of the business. So understanding a profit and loss, very valuable. Now, the next class I took was organizational behavior and management. And this was one of my favorite classes because I really like dealing with people. This taught you all about how to be a better manager of people. And the two biggest takeaways I got here were all around the concept of motivation. So motivation, I think, is this word that gets thrown around a lot, and it doesn't get used correctly, in my opinion, a lot of the time. So I think it's really important to understand what the definition of it is before I tell you what my takeaway is. So the actual definition of motivation in this class was defined as the intensity and duration of an effort, action, or a behavior. So I think understanding it from that perspective lets you kind of work backwards and think of how to create motivation in other people. Really, all that means is you want people to take an action or have a behavior for longer and with more intensity. So how do we do that? The biggest takeaway I got from this class is the motivating force equation. It goes like this. It's motivating force equals expectancy times instrumentality times valence. And those are super fancy words. You honestly don't need to know what those words are, but I'll tell it to you like this. Basically, someone is going to only be as motivated as like the actual sum of these three things. So what is expectancy? Expectancy is simply the odds that someone thinks of succeeding with something. Then instrumentality is the odds of getting their desired outcome if they do actually succeed with the thing. And then valence is the value to them of actually achieving that thing. So I'll give you an example. With me, I decided to get my MBA because I was very motivated to do it because of these three things. If we work backwards and think about it from that, I thought there was a really high likelihood of success if I did try to get my MBA. I knew this because I had a good track record as a student before this and was very interested in being a better business owner. I had a very strong reason for it. So in my mind, there was very high odds of success of getting my MBA. Now, the actual outcome that I thought I would get from it is being a better, more rounded, and more qualified business person that could elevate my career and elevate my businesses. And I actually thought there was really good odds of this as well, because there are countless examples of other people who have gone and gotten their MBA and actually had that great success and really elevated their careers because of it. I've got these people in my life and I follow them on social media. There's just countless examples. So I thought there was really good odds of getting my desired outcome if I did it. Now, valence is the value of the actual outcome to you. So to me, being a better, more well-rounded business person meant everything. It meant that I was going to be able to elevate my career and really get to where I wanted to go faster than anything. So because of these three factors all kind of working together, it was very, very motivating for me to go get my MBA. And so I did. Now, the next class I had was applied business research tools. And I found out the hard way, I really don't like crunching deep numbers and doing like correlations and things like that. So I didn't really like this class. But the one big thing I did get out of it was predictive analytics. And all this means is kind of reverse engineering numbers from where you need them to be. So I'll use an example here, and this might actually resonate with some people. So imagine if you do some kind of service, right? Let's take me, for example. I have a consulting service, and this all relies on me going out and finding clients that I can do work with. Now, to find clients, I have to go make relationships and find opportunities. So that means I have to talk to a lot of people. So as you can see, I'm slowly kind of reverse engineering back from what the desired result is. So if my desired result is to find more clients, then I probably have to have a certain amount of conversations with people who are a good fit for me for one to actually want to sign with a client as a client for me. So I might find out that out of 10 conversations that I have with someone who's a good fit as a client for me, only one actually becomes a client. So if I know that, then that means that if I want to get a new client, I have to go have those 10 conversations. Now, for me to have those 10 conversations, it might take me reaching out to 100 people. I might have to reach out to 100 people, and only 1 in 10 actually takes me up on having that conversation. And I can only actually work towards a result if I know what those numbers are, what those kind of key performance indicators are. So the next class that I took was business law. And the basic kind of idea that I got from this, I got a lot of ideas from this, but the biggest thing was that there are so many areas of specialty within law that just going to one person to solve all of your legal needs does not really get you anywhere. And I'll use an example of something I actually did that was probably a bad move. So when I was selling one of my previous companies, actually during the MBA, we went to go talk to a lawyer to actually draw up some agreements and kind of walk us through it. Now, the issue was that while this lawyer did have some experience, like a little bit of experience with selling companies, it was not something that they specialized in. So what we should have done looking back is we should have gone to someone who specialized in actually doing this, because there's so many intricacies of law in every individual area that if you don't go to someone who has a specialty in it, they're probably not going to be able to guide you through it correctly. So the next class that I took was finance. This was one of 2 finance classes that we actually took. And the biggest thing I learned in this first class was that you can use financial ratios and other ratios to benchmark your performance against others. So I'll use an example of this. I actually talked to someone, a client of mine at one point, who had a mental health counseling clinic. And so she was thinking about selling this thing, and we were looking for opportunities to make it more profitable and to increase the overall value of it. So what we ended up finding out was that in the mental health counseling industry, there's a very strong benchmark to look at, which is how much payroll they're paying to the people, to the counselors, compared to the revenue. So if you think about that, that's a ratio. Imagine that they have $100,000 in revenue and they're paying $40,000 in payroll. So they actually were at around this level. They were a lot bigger, but they were around that margin and that ratio. So that ratio would basically be 4/10. So a 40% payroll over revenue. So what that actually tells you is where you stand compared to competitors, because what we found out is that the industry standard and the industry benchmark for a successful company in that industry was more like 15 to 30% payroll as a result of revenue. So we found out that people are either overpaid or they're not making enough revenue compared to what they're paying their people. So I identified a lot of opportunities for us to work on these things. So the takeaway there is that you can find that kind of benchmark in your industry and for your company. Now, the next class that I took was Finance 2. It was the second finance class. The biggest value I got from this was that any asset and a business can be included in that is actually worth the value of the cash flows that it brings at the end of the day. Nothing else. It's worth the value of what the expected future cash flows are. So what you can do with that as a business owner is understand that if you ever want to sell your business and you want it to be worth a lot and to be paid for a lot, you should understand what the actual cash flows of it are and how to increase those. Pretty cool stuff. So the next class that I took was International Business. And this was a really cool class. The professor that taught this was this German guy who had done consulting work for all kinds of different companies across many, many countries over his career. And so he had experienced many cultures. The biggest takeaway I got from this class was that your communication, whenever you're talking to someone that's in a different industry, needs to be actually customized to the context of how that person communicates. So I'll give you an example. One thing we learned is that in the German culture that my professor was from, they tend to be very blunt and they don't really they don't have many formalities. They kind of just come out and say whatever they're thinking. So for you to kind of be able to communicate effectively with someone that comes from a culture like that in a business setting, you should probably adjust your communication style to that kind of direct language. And you should also understand that they might say some pretty blunt things and you should do your best not to be offended by that. And I say this to say, many people think that it's kind of on the other person that you're talking to just adjust to your communication style. I think that's a losing mindset. And if you understand where someone's background comes from, where their cultural expectations lie, you do some research on how to communicate to that, you could be a lot more effective, and especially in business. Now, this is the reason, by the way, that a lot of times business owners that are of a particular nationality have a lot of clients or customers that are that nationality, is because they understand each other's culture so well that it just makes sense for them. So the next class that I took was marketing management, strategic marketing management. So this taught us all about how to speak to your customer avatar directly. So the biggest thing that I learned here was that you have to actually be the type of company that your customer would want to go to and be where they are. So I'll give you an example. If you have a product or a service of some kind that mostly appeals to people that are aged maybe 50 to 60 years old, and you go to TikTok to try to market it, you might not have as much success as just going to Facebook, because the people are already there. They're already using that platform. So if you bring your product or service to that platform, you're meeting them where they're at. And ultimately, what I found out in this class is that good marketing is all about meeting the customer or the client where they're at, both psychologically and actually physically, geographically where they're at. The next class that I took was supply chain. So in this class, what I learned is whoever has the best supply chain wins. And I think you should think of this not just in terms of actual moving products, but also service. The thing I learned about this is because I'm very much in the service industry, supply chain can mean a lot of things. It doesn't just have to mean products like moving around in a truck. It could also mean the speed and the quality of delivery. And that's kind of the way that I think about it, at least. So whoever has the best supply chain wins. Let's use two examples, right? Let's imagine that there's two companies that have bookkeeping services. Ultimately, whichever one can deliver the actual service and get it to the customer more quickly and more efficiently with less roadblocks in the way is going to be a lot more successful. So you can kind of take note of this, whatever type of business you are. You can take note of this and actually try to deliver your product or your service more quickly and more efficiently for the person on the other end of the receiving it, and you'll be a lot more successful. The next class that I took was one of two leadership classes that we took. So in this class, really what we did in this class is we interviewed someone that had been a leader for a long time. We interviewed them about their leadership style and how they'd found success in their leadership. So we interviewed this guy that had worked in manufacturing plants for decades, and he leads like, I think, hundreds of people there. And so he'd learned a lot about it in his career there. And the biggest thing that I got away from talking to this guy is he said the key to leadership is take note of the people that you want to be like and that you admire and that feel like good leaders to you. And then also take note of the ones who have poor leadership and that you don't want to be like, and adopt the qualities of the ones that you do want to be like, and get rid of any qualities that you have that are like the one that you don't want to be like. So in practical use, I kind of thought back to some of my background, and I dealt with this leader that was actually really bad a couple of years ago. I was working in this startup, and one of my early partners, we kind of dove into this partnership with them. I found out that he would kind of talk about, he would talk to the employees and the people that we were working with a very low level of respect and not really meet them where they were at. So in my practical use, as me trying to be a better leader, I tried to take note of that and try to really do the exact opposite of that. Now, on the other hand, I had a manager back a few years before that that was a really great leader. And the things that she would do is she would really try to take personal time with each of us and try to actually help us reach the particular goals that we had. So because she would do that, we felt very empowered and we actually wanted to go get good results for the company. So I try to take note of that and try to just have that as a leadership quality whenever I'm leading people in my company and in my organization, and had a lot of success with that. Now, in the second leadership class that we took, the biggest thing that I got from this is that you can be a lot more effective as a leader if you really lean into the strengths that you already have and don't try to just cover the weaknesses that you have. That's not to say that you should completely ignore your weaknesses. You should also understand those. But it was based around this concept of figuring out what you actually are good at and using that natural strength that you have to help find resources or people to cover your weaknesses. So for me, I found out that I have a really strong ability to influence people. So what I can do about that is, while I might have certain lacks of organization or other skills, I can actually influence people and recruit them to go cover those weaknesses and do things for me. So really powerful stuff. The takeaway there is, like, whatever you feel like you're naturally good at, just try to get even better and better at that. And that can help you cover some of those weaknesses that you have. Now, the next class that I wanted to talk about was negotiation. This one was really, really cool. One of my favorite classes I've ever took. We would basically do a case study every class where we would read this whole write-up, and we would be assigned to a particular side of a negotiation. And then we would actually negotiate with someone in our class. So the biggest takeaway I got from this was that there is always some kind of out of the box or out of scope solution that you might not see. So you have to ask questions to find it. Give you an example. There could be there was one where we were negotiating with someone, and we owned a house and they wanted to buy that house. And it turned out that there was this adjacent lot to the house that the buyer actually cared a lot about. And so when we went to go sell this house to them, I was able to actually negotiate a better price because I asked them about their motivations for wanting the house and for wanting that lot. And I asked them about some of their plans for that adjacent lot. And because I was able to identify some of those things, I was able to come up with a little bit of an out of scope solution to a problem that we didn't already have. So the next thing, the last class that I wanted to talk about was capstone. This was our kind of last class that we took. And the biggest value that I got out of this one was the value of partnerships in business. So some of the best companies in the world have gotten to where they're at because they find the right partnerships. So if you're a business owner, there's probably, same as like the personal strengths and weaknesses, there's probably some things that your business is really good at and other things that your business is not as good at. So I'll give you an example from me as well. One thing I realized as I was getting into my consulting is that I was developing this brand presence, and I had a lot of people following along with what I was doing, very interested in it, some of them business owners that could become clients. But I didn't really have a very concrete product or service. I would get to them, I would talk to them, but it was difficult for me to really give them what they needed because I hadn't spent enough time designing a good service. So I actually found a partner who had been doing it a lot longer than I had, and he did not have much of a brand presence or an ability to kind of find people online. But what he did have is he had a very concrete service offering and something, kind of an infrastructure that I could build off of. So using my brand presence and ability to find people to work with and his actual good service and product that was fleshed out, it made for a really beautiful and much better partnership where we can probably both make more money just because I didn't focus as much on my weaknesses, but I found someone else who could cover those weaknesses using my strengths. So those have been just a few of the takeaways from the classes that I've took. I hope this saves you $39,000 and over 1,200 hours that I've spent over the last couple of years. And I hope this also helps you understand whether or not you want to get an MBA as a current or future business owner. And I hope you subscribe to my channel for more videos like this, where I talk about business, how to grow, and how to make your business worth more.